Hello, welcome to Mike's Mets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota. Happy Friday to you. So, the Mets' great road trip out west continues as they picked up a big win against the San Francisco Giants, winning last night 9-4. The offense was rolling. The Mets' pitching was serviceable at best, got the job done, but the offense really came through in a big game. Brandon Nimmo stays hot, and Pete Alonso is still probably in one of the best stretches of his career, I gotta say, right now. So let's pick it up, and let's talk about Kodai Senga first. So Kodai Senga, the pitcher starter for this game for the Mets, and Senga coming off a rough game last week against the Oakland Athletics. He pitched okay, but was so wild that he really didn't end up in a situation where he could even win the game. Ultimately, only threw, I think, 4 innings in that game. And the end result of that was Senga did not get the win. And a lot of people kind of looking at him and saying he's a little wild for our likings, and I hope that he improves upon it. And, he wasn't facing what could be viewed as a spectacular offense. This was, the Oakland Athletics, let's say, probably the worst team in Major League Baseball this year. And coming into this game, he's going to be facing another offense that, as much as people love to say, oh, like, what a great start that, guys like Michael Conforto and J.D. Davis and Wilmer Flores have gotten off to. These guys are not like elite caliber players. Let's really just kind of take a breath and say, okay, J.D. Davis, I'm glad you got such a great start. You're probably not going to be an all-star. You're not going to be this, like amazing find that the Giants got for basically nothing. Michael Conforto, I still think is just absolute hot trash. But that's another podcast for another day. So let's go back to Senga, and he only goes 5 innings in this start. Only allows 4 runs, but is just kind of all over the place. Again, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. He's seen his ERA after the first 2 starts against the Marlins jump up. He's now at a 4.29 ERA. And probably his biggest sin that he's committed is just that he's throwing a lot of pitches. He's just like consistently not going deep in the games, and it's something that you really cannot do in Major League Baseball, especially this year when the Mets' bullpen is kind of pieced together and more or less not a complete unit. You really can't be abusing them and going so not deep at all into these games. I mean, he's now 1-3. He's 3-0. He's not lost, but none of his starts except for his first one I would classify as really like a terrific performance. And he's had these moments where he's just like lost it every game. So he would eventually come out after the 5th inning, enough to get him the win. But after that, he left it to the bullpen, and the bullpen came through. Once again, 4 shutout innings by that crew, and Brooks Raley would get the hold, and just good, good performances all around. Drew Smith, another good outing. John Curtis. I mean, these guys are pitching like basically like every day, it feels like. But so you would hope that at some point that they're going to get a start from somebody where they're able to go maybe 6 or 7 innings. That'd be preferable, because I gotta be honest, I don't remember when the last time that was. So Mets pitching still kind of a troubling situation right now. It has not been great early on. You're hoping that they're going to recover soon, and thankfully they've gotten some helpfully bad performances on the other side from the opposing team's side. So we had Sean Manaea pitching against us in this game, and Manaea terrible, and he would leave into the 4th inning, and from that point on, give it to Tristan Beck, who was not much better, and ultimately this was just a really bad game from the Giants starters, who, I mean, the Giants are not a good team. They're okay. I think probably they might be like a 4th place team. They're not going to make the playoffs. The offense is kind of just pieced together, and their starting rotation with the exception of probably Logan Webb, is not great. I mean, like you're looking at some like a very bad team. Let's say that. Like the Mets have a situation where they were able to kind of bounce through this West Coast trip with start with the Athletics, take 2 out of 3 from a Dodgers team that's scuffling right now, and now facing the Giants. I mean, you put yourself in a good position, and then to come back home and face the Washington Nationals. Great schedule right now for the Mets, so they got to take advantage of all these games, and they are. Brandon Nimmo still is like the hottest player in baseball right now. He goes 3 for 5 again. He's now batting 368. You would think like he's just like this on this incredible tear. He's insanely hot recently, and it's been funny to watch. And then we have to talk. I also want to say Francisco Lindor consistently goes like 1 for 4 in all these games, and it's appreciated. I like it that he's going like he at least gets a single or maybe a double every game. Like but he is consistently like he's the rare L has not shown up for Lindor. He's not going 0 for 5 with 6 strikeouts or anything like that. These are good performances from Lindor every game. So underrated. He's probably the third most important member of that lineup right now because Pete Alonso, my God, I mean, he just stays insanely hot and goes 2 for 4 in this game, 4 RBIs. He hits his 9th home run of the season in the 4th inning. It was a 2-run home run with no one outs. That game, it was basically a line drive that he just cleared the fence, but still counts. And Alonso just stays in the stretch where he's just continually hitting home runs. And then not long after that, we would have Eduardo Escobar hitting his 2nd home run. Nice to see for Escobar to get that game. He would go 2 for 5 in this game. Nice moment for him. Just kind of trying to stave off Brett Beatty at this point. And Beatty, since he got called up, hasn't hit like incredibly well, but I don't really like, as I mentioned before, last podcast, I don't like this like start-stop method that Showalter is using because I feel like it's not really helping the younger guys, especially because again, this is another game where it was the veterans coming out again. Is Eduardo Escobar and Tomas Nido getting the starts over Francisco Alvarez and Brett Beatty, and it worked out well with Escobar. Tomas Nido, of course, can't hit at all, so you got to wonder why exactly is he coming in these games more often than not. This isn't a situation where they need to be splitting the time freely. We know Nido can't hit. That's not like some kind of revelation that oh, he was this great veteran hitter who all of a sudden is lost it like Escobar. It's Nido cannot hit. He'll luck into hits every once in a while, and he'll sometimes surprise everybody with like, oh, that was a great at bat, good job. But basically, he just swings at the first pitch for the most part, whenever it's coming towards him. And he'll either ground it out or pop out or strike out. And that's usually the method of what he gets. And occasionally he'll bloop a hit or hit a fake like swinging bunts like along the third base line like he did this year. But that's just what he does. And Nido doesn't need to be in these games as consistently as he is. There's no reason to start him as often as he is. Get Alvarez the reps. Get him starting more and more. And this was a discussion that like me and my brother had recently about Showalter, which is just that he's like the Tom Thibodeau of Major League Baseball. He just does not like playing the younger guys, and so be it. Like that, if that's the way you feel like about Alvarez and Beatty, that's okay. I mean, they haven't got off to incredible starts, I'll assume, but neither have Escobar and Nido. You really can't say that like those two guys who have a combined like 350 OPS really scream we need to be starting these guys consistently. I would rather bank on the younger guys who have lots of talent and seem to be important pieces of the future for the Mets team to be getting the majority of the playing time. No offense to Escobar, I'm glad he got the home run today, but he has not looked great early on this year. Another guy who hasn't looked great, who also came through this game, was Jeff McNeil. And McNeil, he's got to be feeling great about this game. He went 3 for 3, hit his first home run of the season in the 6th inning. And comes away with 2 RBIs. All of a sudden, his batting average is like it's this is how early we are in the season where McNeil's been scuffling pretty much the entire year, and you go 3 for 3 one game. Your average all of a sudden is back up to 275, and you're like, oh, okay, well, were we worried about Jeff McNeil? So, these are just one hot game can really put you in. Look at Brandon Nimmo, back into more of a positive standing and feeling. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay, my stats are fine. All right, like so. I hope McNeil is starting to come out of it, and having him and Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso. Those guys are going to be big parts of the Mets lineup. There's no denying it. The other 2 guys are going to be Mark Hanha and Starling Marte. Marte did not play in this game. They are resting him just to see if they need to put him on the IL. Hopefully not. I would prefer that they not do that, but because the result is that Jeff McNeil has to play right field. And McNeil's a great right fielder, but then that means you also have to put Luis Guillorme back in the lineup. And Guillorme went 1 for 4 in this game, but I also don't want Guillorme starting in these lineups too often. So let's hope that Marte is hopefully mending and on the right track to coming back into the lineup on an everyday basis. Mark Canha, after a good start, has looked really rough. It hasn't looked good for Canha so far. And these are one of the situations where they're looking at and saying, okay, is this a position that we need to upgrade? Because Canha, and I like Canha, I like him a lot, has not really performed the way that the Mets thought he would. He was, I think, solid last year. It's been kind of a situation where he's looked good one game, not so good the other game. So very inconsistent, and you need Canha to get better at that. So overall, I think a very good win for the Mets. This was a terrific performance from the offense, which I feel like really need to get going. If they're going to beat up on the Giants for 4 games, I'm all about it. Let's do it. It's just important to see that the Mets, make the most of these games because they do need to beat up on these lesser teams like the Athletics and the Giants, and taking advantage of it even on a road trip is really going to be a big part of this for the Mets. Because after Washington, they got their first series against Atlanta that I'm looking forward to, and that's going to be next week. And you need to try to put yourself in as good a position as possible when you're going to be facing Atlanta, who are going to be huge threats. I think the Mets are probably going to be the biggest test of Atlanta's early season thus far as well. So it'll be a huge series. It's going to be, I'm sure, watched by a lot of people. A lot of people looking at that as seeing it as a potential, once again, a potential series and a potential matchup that could be happening later this year with postseason implications. So another thing to watch. The other thing that I want to talk about is the Max Scherzer situation. And Scherzer has been suspended by Major League Baseball for 10 games. Scherzer announced that he would not appeal the decision because he thought he was going to be in front of, and this was his words, in front of a neutral arbiter for his appeal. As it turns out, it's not. He would be appealing his case directly to Major League Baseball, and because of that, he's like, there's no point because it's Major League Baseball's rules, essentially. So he's just going to serve his 10-game suspension. Not great for the Mets, who now have to go another two, possibly 3 starts without Scherzer. And it's okay for Scherzer, I guess in this case, to just rest and get yourself healthy. I guess that's one way to look at it. Is this is a guy who's going to probably need time off at different periods, and better he do it as a suspension, I guess, than as a IL start, I suppose. But it's again, early on, not what you need. You don't need your ace starter, again, because your other ace starter is on the IL starting off the year. You don't need your ace starter to be serving a 10-game suspension, especially this early. So I guess it's better now than later on, but the Major League Baseball really needs to get a hold of all this. The most damning thing I've heard about everything is that the only umpire who's been doing this, who's been ejecting players for this substance found on hand, which he thinks apparently signifies an intent to cheat and a foreign substance, is the umpire Phil Cuzzi. And Phil Cuzzi has ejected 3 guys thus far since they started checking hands for substance, and he's, I mean, Scherzer and his agent Scott Boras have said pretty much he has a standard that is apparently unique to himself. He's the only one who does this, and he's the only one who perceives it as, oh, this must be an illegal substance. Whereas Scherzer's screaming at him, basically saying, it's nothing. It's just sweat and rosin. Now, the estimation probably is that the reason why it was so clumpy and sticky on his hands was that Scherzer had washed his hand with alcohol, which you can do, but it can lead to more of a sticky residue left on your hands if you don't clean them really thoroughly and then really like dry them and like wash them off, because the alcohol will remain on your hands, which is what alcohol does. And when he re-rosins, it's going to lead to him being like really sticky, and actually like probably too sticky at that point. That should be another thing that should have been left to the umpire's mind, which is that if his hands were that sticky, he probably wasn't going to be able to control that ball at all. Like, he probably would have had to like clean off his hands. So it's just one of those things where you're like, what are we doing right now? What's going on? Why are we checking him in that matter? And if it is the case that we found something on your hand, why not just tell him to clean it off? If it's something that you find that is not like a pine tar, then what's the point of this? Like, it's not tack. You watched him do it. Other than having like a camera on him in the dugout to make sure that he doesn't that he isn't putting some kind of illegal substance on his hands, what is the point in terms of doing this if you're going to give him all the same materials and then be surprised when a combination of the materials that he has on hand leads to, oh, yeah, your hands are going to come out a little bit sticky. Maybe you shouldn't have done that in this case. Oh, okay, what did you do? Okay, sweat and rosin. Clean off your hands again, and if it happens again, okay, you're going to have to make sure that you're cleaning your hands off more properly. It's not that difficult, and I don't understand why, when you have an explanation that makes sense like that, when Scherzer is just like adamantly screaming at you, why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. I just got taken. You just told me not to do it again. Why would I try and like repeat the same thing over again? It's one of those things that it just like boggles the mind, the lack of understanding that the umpires have, and that Major League Baseball has basically just given them no real instructions, and that you're telling guys. And I don't really have great respect for the umpires. I mean, it's a difficult job, but I also think that they take too much emotion into the starts, and you're basically you're dealing with oftentimes guys who have just as big as egos as the major league players. So you got to wonder why exactly you're leaving it into their hands as much as as much as it is. So it's just one of those problems where I wish Scherzer probably had said during his explanation, which I don't believe he ever says at any point, that I had washed them off of alcohol. The guy had seen me wash them off of alcohol. If I put rosin back on my hands afterwards, and then I'm sweating like crazy because it's Los Angeles. I'm also going to get a lot of sweat on my hands, and the combination is going to be that I'm going to have stuff on my hands. I can't do anything about that. I like if you want me to wash off my hands again, I'll do that. But this time, maybe don't use alcohol. I guess that would probably be the guess. They probably should have like a microfiber cloth on hand to just like to completely dry off the hands afterwards. But it's got to be said probably also that the pitchers don't really want like dry hand, like they don't want like just bare hands like holding the ball, especially on a day with sweating. A day where it's hot, he's with Scherzer sweating, and he needs maximum, control of the ball that he's going to be throwing 95 miles an hour, and he doesn't want to hit anybody with it. He doesn't want to be walking the entire ballpark. So, Major League Baseball really needs to kind of come to grips with like what is a real situation, because now because the previous 2 ejections that happened, they were like nothing. These were nobody starters, and it wasn't even a news story. I don't think I even was aware that there had been prior ejections to this. Scherzer's a completely different story. Scherzer's somebody who has a powerful agent, everybody knows Scherzer. He's a future Hall of Famer, and Scherzer's not going to stay quiet. And Scherzer's been very adamant that this is just a really dumb process that they're doing, and that Major League Baseball doesn't really know what the end result is supposed to be, other than they don't want anybody having anything on their hands. But they haven't informed the umpires or really the players what exactly is required or they can keep on hand. The rule essentially is that you can't have any substance on your hand when you come off the field or go on the field that other than the rosin. But there's just natural factors that take into account. Like Scherzer said, sweat often plays in a part. He's touching his head. He's rubbing his face. Sweat will eventually be mixed in with the rosin. And if you add in alcohol, which is you're trying to get off the rosin because they told him you need to wash your hands afterwards because apparently they thought he had too much rosin on his hand from the combination of the sweat. This is all just like a very circular argument, and nothing really gets done in this situation. So I'm still trying to understand what exactly is their reasoning. I can't come to terms with it. It's one of the weirder situations that it's just one of those things that Major League Baseball kind of like haphazardly threw out, and they say you can't do it. And I think when you have umpires enforcing it rather than people who probably are more aware of the ruling and would understand that this is just a natural factor rather than anybody's real intent to cheat, the end result is you're rejecting a guy just for having stuff on his hands that he had no intention of using, and it's really difficult to understand what exactly they want to do, and because of that, everybody's kind of left in the dark. So you're hoping that the Mets are going to speak with Scherzer, probably inform him what the ruling is and what you do and how you do not let this happen again. And they got to tell the entire pitching staff about this as well, because they can't have this going on, and especially not with, apparently, Phil, I got to eject you if you come out with like a booger on your hand, Cuzzy, who is going to make it clear that he doesn't want anybody having anything. Until somebody speaks to Cuzzy and says, that's not the case, we're going to keep having this problem over and over again. So definitely a situation to watch. It's probably another bullet in the gun of Major League Baseball kind of aiming at the Mets, which it just feels like a lot of ill will is kind of being targeted at the Mets at this point. But nothing really can be done about that other than do what is as much as what Major League Baseball says and stay within the rules as best you can. Scherzer's going to have to eat it, unfortunately. I don't want to see him penalized for it, but that's just the kind of way it goes. So, thank you for listening to Mike's Mets Podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike's Mets Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.